Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Gerard again from Help University. This is just following up on a talk I gave just before Chinese New Year to the chaplain in Christus Aman, Taman Tun. And there was a request after the talk because there were a whole lot of questions, and we were not able to finish the questions. And there was a request for me to provide answers to a list of another 15 questions or so. And so today, I'm just following up with that request. And the title of the talk that I gave just before Chinese New Year was on the topic of coping with homeschool and online learning. Yeah, so let me just dive straight into the questions that were asked during that webinar. Okay, the first question is should I allow my son to play online games? Uh, Now, how do I even begin with this? More questions from me. How old is your son? How long does he play? Do you set boundaries when it comes to playing games? Is it a yes or no that you don't allow online games altogether? I mean, there are no clear cut answers. Yeah. So let me respond to some of the questions that I asked. Yeah. Obviously, if the child is very, very young, there needs to be some amount of regulation depending on the type of games that you would allow. So you are the parent, you set the boundaries. Yeah. It's never a question of yes or no. I play online games. My son spends his weekend on online games. And one of the things I used to do when they were young, growing up, I set very clear boundaries. Weekdays, no games. Right? Weekdays, school, finish homework, and if you do want to, you ask permission from me. I will allow you maybe a bit of time to de-stress. At most, maybe half an hour a day, but you always play it on school days outside. So I would never allow, for example, iPad in the room. So everything is done in the open. Everything is done transparent, where you can actually monitor, observe what is going on. And on weekends, then I set the amount of time that they are allowed to actually go online to play whatever games that they want to. So again, it's a question of setting those boundaries, making clear about the consequences of our boundary violations, um, being very very clear about the relationship of trust that you build with them, because ultimately that's what it is. We can't monitor whether our children do the things that we tell them not to do, or don't do the things that we tell them not to do. And we can't monitor them 24 hours of the day. If they really wanted to, when you're not at home, they will go ahead and play the online game. So it's about managing that relationship of trust and establishing that very, very early on. And so that when you set whatever boundaries, whatever rules regarding whether it's online games or any other issue, it's always first establishing that relationship, and then and ensuring that they understand why you value such a relationship of trust, and you set boundaries and be clear about the violations if there are boundary violations. Yeah. So and if you see that it happens once too often, that becomes, they seem to be overly addicted, might not be the right word to use at this point, but overly engaged to the extent that they are lagging behind their schoolwork, that takes precedence over a lot of other things. The first thing that they do is they go on their iPad and play those games. Then of course, then you have to take it a step further. Yeah. Next question. Finally, anxiety and fear that she is going to fail. How to help her? Exam anxiety is a very common, um, whether it's in your first year, whether it's in secondary school, primary school, or in your final year, or for anyone sitting for an exam. Yeah, because think about it, where does fear and anxiety come from? It comes from a very specific stream of thought. Yeah, that there is a threat to my psychological or physical well-being. Yeah. And so when anxiety happens, it is because it's something that is future based. So before I even sit for the exam, I have, various kinds of expectations I set for myself. I have, statements that I might make myself. I must perform this. If I fail, if I don't get my A, if I don't, then I imagine in my mind that all sorts of different consequences will happen, and those consequences are never positive, right? Because if you imagine to yourself, I'm absolutely going to get an A, I will there be anxiety? Will there be fear? No, right? I'm confident. I'm going to 100% confident that it's going to be a fantastic experience. I'm so well prepared. It's going to be a breeze. Will there be anxiety? No, right? It's only when I start imagining those worst case scenarios that then become a threat to me. That's when the anxiety happens. So one has to go back to assure my son or my daughter who's going through this period. Yeah, what's the worst that can happen? What is it that you think will happen? How how much evidence is there that you believe it will actually happen for sure, right? And even if it does happen for sure, and you have the evidence because you didn't prepare for the exam, and there's been a consistent pattern of you failing, and for sure, what's the worst can happen if you fail the final exam in your final year? There are various options. You repeat, take time off, go and do something else, and then come back and resit for that exams, come back to your studies. Maybe you're not ready yet for this kind of study at this point in your life, and you've been struggling. And there's no shame that you have to defer, that you have to take some time off. It's when we say to ourselves, we catastrophize, and that's the word that we use in counseling, yeah. When we start to catastrophize an event and make it worse than it actually needs to be, as if it was a life and death situation. That's when the anxiety builds up more than anything else. And more importantly, for us as parents, when we see our children going through this, we just have to just assure them, son, daughter, you know, nothing changes in terms of my relationship with you, my support for you, my love for you. Yeah. And if you are not able to get through this moment, I will be there for you to walk with you to the next step, to the next stage, wherever you want to go. Yeah. But you don't need to punish yourself in this way by allowing yourself to go through that stress. So that is one level of helping people who go through this. Of course, the other levels, there are various kinds of strategies, relaxation techniques. When you start feeling the anxiety coming on, then stop, practice a bit of mindfulness, do a bit of breathing exercise. Always bring your mind back to the present. Don't allow it to move so far ahead that the further it is, you lose control, and you lose the sense of the moment. Yeah. So anxiety, remember, is always a future paced worry about something happening in the future that has not happened yet. And if anybody here is able to tell me for sure 100%, what's going to happen 5 minutes from now, or a day from now, especially when it comes to events like exams, and predict what is 100% for sure with certainty. Please tell me. I might come by and ask you for some numbers. If you know for sure you can read the future, I'll be interested to know what is it that you have, what gift that you have. Maybe you have some superpowers that I don't, but most people in the world don't. Yeah. So we just need to be mindful of this, pull our minds back to the present. Yeah. And once you are able to be in the present, focus on our environment, on the moment, on where I am, be aware of what's happening to me, that will help bring down the anxiety. Yeah. Yeah. How to stay focused during a 2 hour lecture from a college student. um, the one thing I realize, for myself, and with the students I know who do very well in my classes, yeah, um, are students who are very much self-driven, right? Success or failure, learn or not learn, is not dependent on the person teaching. It's dependent on them. So you might have the most boring lecturer in the world, right? With a voice that just drones away, and it's an absolute cure for insomnia. Your learning will not be dependent on the lecturer. Your learning is in your preparation that you do prior to coming to class. Your learning is dependent on what is it that you want to do during the class, to engage with the lecturer, to try and understand what the person is saying, because it's all about that. It's about the process of learning. And if you come to your class prepared, then you can follow what it is. So you read ahead of time. So in order for yourself not to be bored, or to stay focused, you really have to be prepared, so that it's like listening to someone speak, right? In order for me to really understand what the person is speaking, I have to make the effort. It doesn't happen naturally. So if I tell myself switch off, I will switch off. My mind will wander away. But if I'm really interested, and I'm interested because there is something about what you are saying that is important for me. And so, as a student, if I go into the class saying, "Today I've read through what I want, what is going to happen today," because your course outlines and your lecture outlines are given to you way ahead of time, and I know what the lecturer or the teacher is going to do today, then I know what is it are those questions that I want to ask, and then I will look out during the lecture for the opportunity to ask those questions. Yeah, so it's listening with intent. It's making the preparation before you go into class. That will help stay focused. And of course, if really you can't stay focused and this happens to be a pattern, then we have to ask ourselves, what is preventing me from doing that? Is it only with this particular lecturer, or with other lecturers, with every single lecturer that's there? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I too tired? Maybe that's why I can't focus. So all of those are also questions that we need to ask ourselves. Yeah, that is preventing us from focusing at that point in time. This is a question on catechism classes in the new normal. Must the church reform the way it does faith education? I'm not sure if I can speak on behalf of the church, but certainly I think those conversations are there. Recently, when I was facilitating the clergy assembly for the archdiocese, this question was actually discussed at length. There have been followed. There have been some follow-ups. There's been some acknowledgement that the manner in which catechism classes, classes of faith classes, religion classes have been going on may not have been may lack certain pedagogical competencies on behalf of those who are delivering, facilitating those catechism classes. And so there have been conversations by the Archdiocesan Catechetical Commission to see what is it that it can do to address some of these issues, some of the gap, the shortcomings, especially now that when you have to do it online, it's even more difficult because many of the people who teach catechism are not trained as teachers, and to even teach online is another level of competencies that needs to be there. So other than just the content, the curriculum itself of faith education, there's also the issue of the delivery of the content of the faith, and the understanding of the learners themselves. So all of those are discussions I think that are currently ongoing in the archdiocese, and hopefully you'll be able to see some change in time to come. Yeah. Do you foresee online learning carrying on for long? Um, Many, if not all, universities have already started making the move towards digitization of learning. Yeah, so they recognize that it's not just this pandemic. Yeah, people are not just waiting for the time when things can be normalized again. Even if they normalize again, I think the 21st century, the fourth industrial revolution, the changes in society, the changes, the pace of change, and the impact of technology on every facet of our lives suggests and demands that change towards some form of virtual, online, blended, whatever name that we want to call it, um, learning, this sort of online interaction, this is going to be the way of the future, right? That even if things do normalize, and we do have on-site classes, online learning will always now be a major facet in every university in terms of the delivery of knowledge, yeah, and the whole learning process. So yes, I anticipate that this will be now a common feature, even if we do go back for face-to-face classes. Okay. Another question: is it healthy, normal to have homework, which they start around 8 p.m. and finish around 11 p.m.? Is it normal in a child's life? I think that's a question of um, the issue of homework, the purpose for homework, um, the importance of homework, and again, depending on the age of the child, like my international schools, they have what we call a homework policy. And generally, for younger children, those in the lower primary, there's no homework because whatever learning that can be done needs to be done is already done in school, right? And children then are allowed to just enjoy their lives as children, right? Unfortunately, there's a lot of expectations on the part of parents. If they don't see homework, they feel as if they're being shortchanged by some of these international schools. What is there no homework? Why is there no homework? And how old is your child? If your child is in preschool, in kindergarten, he's 4 years old. and some parents just demand homework. So there's that pressure. But good international schools will be very clear about their homework policies. Yeah? So for very young children, there is no homework because learning is already happening. It's not about learning content. So again, that comes down to an understanding of what education is all about, learning is all about. Okay, as children grow older, then homework is meant to the reinforce learning that happens in the classroom, right? And of course, the older that they go, and because most schools have very sensible homework policies, they try to minimize homework to maybe an hour a day for those in upper primary. Maybe as you grow older, it might be a little more, maybe 2 hours. Yeah. Again, depending on that time of the day lah. So if that time of the year, especially for those in exam classes, yeah, when you're doing a lot of revision, there will be a lot more of that revision intensive kind of moments when they start to catch up. But by and large, I think um, about 2 hours on the average for secondary school student, who will be quite normal, will be quite typical. Yeah. And you would expect that because there's only so much that you are able to cover in school, and therefore some sensible policies will always be in place. And if you find that it's overdone, then please do approach your schools, your homeroom teachers, and your subject teachers or the principal of the school to share those concerns, and work with the school to see what is it that can be done. Yeah. Uh, what are the benefits of online learning? Oh wow, where do I begin? Um, as with anything else, there are always a lot of things that we have said about online learning that are disadvantages because we do see the effect of long hours. I mentioned that in my talk. The long hours, the screen time, the possible damage to our eyes if we are looking at the screen for long periods of time. Um, but the main benefits is that you learn anytime of the day. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a live session, but online learning gives us access to education, not just in a certain geographical location. It allows for learning to happen with anyone, anywhere in the world. Yeah. So, for example, we have a lot of international students who are stuck in their home country. They are not allowed to come back to Malaysia. But is learning still happening? Of course, learning is still happening because of the ability to do online education. Yeah. Um, One of the centers I manage is the Cambridge Professional Development Center, where we run the different professional qualifications from Cambridge International. So these are certificates in teaching and learning, or the diploma in teaching and learning. And we recently just trialed a 6 day. Normally, it's an on-site training session for 6 days, but we just trialed and very successfully ran a 6 day online whole day session, yeah, as part of the training program. And the trainers, the facilitators had to do it in such a way that it was, they didn't compromise the richness of the engagement and the learning experience. Yeah. So there are many things that we can do online. In fact, just before recording this, I was exploring a virtual lab, right? And it was really fascinating, where because students now cannot go back on site, there are companies that have come up with a virtual lab where you can actually do experiments, yeah, in all different areas of science, as if you were actually in the lab itself, and it's very very guided. And of course, if you have virtual reality, virtual goggles, you can even see things in 3D as if you are on site itself. So technology is changing in ways beyond our imagination, and it's going so fast that in many ways is able to somewhat compensate really for a lot of on-site experiences. Yeah. So yeah, there are certainly a lot of benefits that come with online learning, as there are also disadvantages, and those are things that we've talked about during the talk also. How do we cater to differentiation in online teaching? That I'm not an expert. I have to um, say when it comes to online teaching. Yeah, I'm a neophyte. I'm not one of those digital natives. Yeah, I'm learning as I go along. But one of the possibilities I see, yeah, in terms of differentiation, is the just as you would have in a typical classroom, you would break them up into different groups, yeah, for different learners of different abilities. The online uh, platform also will have breakout rooms where you have the different learners doing different kinds of assessments or assignments, or going through different kinds of work of differing abilities based on where they are, right? And bear in mind that differentiation, that teaching, yeah, it's not about teaching for 50 minutes to a class set at a certain standard. The whole point of differentiation is that I will talk for 20 minutes of some broad ideas, and then in terms of what I give you, in terms of the assignments, the worksheets, the work that you have to do, that is then tailored differently for you to understand. Yeah, so the concepts are pitched at a certain level, yes, but the teacher doesn't teach for 15 minutes to the general population, right? You teach for about 20 minutes just to explain the concepts, and then you do the differentiation with the different groups through the breakout rooms if you're doing it online. Yeah, so that's one thing that I've tried and different people have tried. Yeah. um, since they already have so much educational screen time, is it okay to allow them some passive or computer game time, considering that considered that as sorry, let me just read this. Since they already have so much educational screen time, is it okay to allow them some passive or computer game time, considered that as their playtime? I'm not sure. If I understand this, my understanding of it is it okay to allow children to continue to still have some computer game time when they already have so much screen time? Again, as I said, you have to determine how much educational time they've actually had, and um, part of our whole growth and development very much depends on us being able to do different things lah, right? So if there's already a lot of time that is spent online, then get them off the screen. Go and do something else. Go for a walk. Go find different kinds of games to play, board games, family fun time. Find different kinds of activities that will get you off the screen. And if you still want to go back after you've done those other things, then yeah, allow for X number of minutes or hours that you will just allow the child to do that, and when you will allow the child to actually do that. So a lot of these questions are not a simple yes or no answer. But you very much have to determine your particular context and your particular situation and adapt accordingly, right? Um, this other question. I believe online teaching and learning is the way forward. How do we cater for physical, social interaction between teacher and students, and students and students, and that's a challenge. I mean, the whole period of this MCO has taught us one thing, like, that we are social beings. Yeah. While there are a lot of benefits that come from the ability to do things online. There have been a lot of studies that have also come up to show that there are certainly mental health uh, issues that happen from the social isolation for children with other children. Yeah. So that social interaction has to be there because we are social beings, and and nothing can still replace the physical interaction that we have. So the opportunity to play with one another, not just online but physically, yeah, because there are so many things that happen uh, in the course of the physical interaction that helps with our overall development, not just talking to someone online all the time. Yeah. So yeah, so when there are moments, when there are opportunities, for that, if you happen to live in the enclosed gated community, and you have neighborhood friends, yeah, practice social distancing, but yes, do allow for that opportunity to play with your friends in the neighborhood if you can't do it with your friends in school. Yeah, so it always helps therefore to know who your neighbors are, and allow for that kind of physical interaction, yeah, that with the people in the community that you're in the neighborhood that you're in. I remember in my growing up years, from in the neighborhood that I lived in, every weekend, there would be people whom I would join to play various kinds of games. No? And they were not friends in school because that's where I learned all my little Hokkien, because I live in a very Hokkien neighborhood. And they did different things than my friends in school, but it was this neighborhood kids that I played with. Yeah, so it's certainly important for us to have the physical interaction, and if you can't do it with people in the school, then by all means do it with friends in the neighborhood. Yeah. uh, yeah, the survey on the screen time by FEH Health. Is this survey conducted in Malaysia or is it another country? It was done in America. FEH, I believe it's an American company. Yeah. Like to hear about how to monitor kids' online activities now that they have more than 8 hours a day online. Yeah, as I said, one of the things that we can try to do is to always keep our learning spaces in the open rather than in the rooms of our children. Yeah. I think one of the things I learned from early on, and I was quite fortunate, I live in a place that actually had a study, and the kids and myself were all in the study. What it did for my kids and I is that I modeled for them. I worked and I studied together with them, right? Because I happen to be in education. So they saw me doing a lot of my work. They saw me doing my research, my dissertation, and I was together with them. And then when they needed help, they would just, uh, turn the chair around to me and and ask me questions regarding something that they needed help in. So having that open policy when it comes to when we are working with technology, when we are working online, yeah, um, helps certainly to monitor what is going on. Again, as I said, very much is based on that relationship that we have that we establish with our children. Yeah. And while we can certainly monitor certain things by checking on their history, our children know how to hide a lot of those things. They know how to, even if you do track want to check their catch, their history, they will know how to delete. They will know how to clear up things. Yeah. And so rather than having that kind of monitoring where it does when you don't have that relationship of trust and love and respect that you have cultivated over the years with your children, monitoring 24 hours of the day, trying to constantly monitor, sends the wrong messages also to our children, that we really don't trust them. And they will respond accordingly. Because you don't trust me, what's the point? I will still do things behind your back. Not that they won't because you trust them, but I think they will be more careful um, to want to break that relationship of trust, right? And what we communicate, how we establish that trust, that's part and parcel of our lives as parents now. Yeah, that we really have to build that first before we then set into place a lot of the other boundaries that I talked about earlier on. Yeah. Uh, One more question. Do we have to fully use the time for the lesson if we are teaching online, example for 2 hours? Is it better to simplify the lesson? Oh, yes, of course. Of course, you don't teach for 2 hours. That's not expected of you as a teacher, even if you're doing it face to face, on site. Yeah. So just because it's 2 hours of lecture, you don't lecture for 2 hours. Yeah, you intersperse it with different kinds of activities, right? Because learning happens when we engage. We are not the model is the phrase that I think I use in the talk is we are not education today, teaching today is not about the sage on the stage. We are the guide by the side. And the whole point of the guide by the side is that we are facilitators of learning. Therefore, when we construct a lesson, when we develop a lesson, we constantly have to be mindful of the learning process of our learners. And how do we develop things in activities, or how do we plan our lessons in such a way that that there's enough time for independent learning, there's enough time for discussion, for interaction, for question and answers, for that engagement, learning engagement to actually happen. Because we've got to believe that our students know quite a bit also. And teaching, therefore, is not about learning content. It's about the process of learning. It's therefore developing those sort of activities that enhances the competencies that they will require when they got into the real world. So content is just basically a tool by which to develop competencies for the 21st century. Yeah. Um, seems we are overwhelmed, parents and kids. But there's a culture that we must carry on full stream with schooling working longer. How to not just cope, but to flourish. Yeah. Oh wow, that's a difficult question for anyone. But ultimately, we all have to make choices. Yeah, with being very clear about home life, work life balance, lah, right? There's only 24 hours of the day that all of us have. And so, given that we have 24 hours of the day, and yes, the demands of work seem to be piling on, especially because we are online all the time, and even because we are not traveling to traffic, etc. Where if we are traveling to traffic, we will turn off the computer at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then we just head home because we don't want to, you know, stay too late in traffic, or go home for dinner, etc. That forces us out of the office space because everybody else has also gone home, right? But because we are at home, we sometimes lose track of that time. So we just have to be very, very mindful of that work-life balance on weekends. Yeah. And these are things that we can set with the school. These are things we can set with our bosses in the workplace, because it is counterproductive for management to work you to the bone to the point that you suffer from burnout and exhaustion. Then it's you will be of no values to the organization, no matter how hardworking you want to be, but you will be of really no value to anyone if you keep pushing ourselves. So finding that work life balance is critical, and finding moments in the day where we must have that downtime for ourselves to recover, for our energies to be recharged. It doesn't mean that we are lazy just because you get off the screen at 6 o'clock when work finishes at 5. Like sometimes in certain cultures, if you come home before 8 o'clock, it's not acceptable. Work finishes at 5, but you must come home only after 8. Right, so many of these people, and I won't mention the country. I think you can guess which country, which Asian country this is. They will just go to some of these bars and pubs, and so that they cannot come home too early. Otherwise, it sends a message as if they're not working hard enough. Yeah, I don't think we need to go to that extent, but having certainly that work-life balance, and it's also making sure that we efficient in our work. That then at work we cut off a lot of the time wasters that we have, that take us away from finishing the different tasks that we have. And one of the things I've discovered working with people from different parts of the world is that they work quite fast. They're quite efficient in what they do. They really cut down a lot of the unnecessary chatter and talk, hanging around the water fountain, having those sort of long coffee breaks, which sometimes we tend to do long lunch breaks, etc., chit chatting away. and then we find that we don't have enough time, and then we have to pile up the work. So it's just managing a lot of what we do on the daily basis, having a list of tasks that we set out to do, and then certain times of the day where it's sacred. This is for family time. So once we are able to just set those sort of boundaries for ourselves, maybe that might help. Yeah. Final question. uh, we technically block internet and screen time across devices, time quota, and what they can do. uh, I'm not sure I see the question here, but yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that the previous question was the last question. So thank you very much. Sorry for making this such a long Q&A. I hope that it's been as beneficial to you as it has been for me participating in this process with you. Have a good weekend and coming up ahead, and Happy New Year to all of you who are celebrating Chinese New Year. Bye bye.